Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how we should not lose hope in a Nintendo Switch 2 reveal happening this year quite yet. There's still room for optimism. It is not over. Yes, there is a possibility we may have to wait longer, but also, for quite some time, the expectation has been a window of time for the Switch 2 reveal, and we are still within that window of time. But there are other things going on that are giving us a little bit more room for optimism, so we're going to be discussing that, but also, to consider both sides of the conversation here, I think it might also be a good idea to discuss a worst case scenario. So that's what we're getting into today. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So many people were confident in a Switch 2 reveal happening in September. Myself included. I was thinking September 19th and I stuck with that for most of the month. But obviously now, that has not happened. So many people were thinking that the Switch 2 reveal might just be happening in September, especially with Nintendo having all their direct presentations in August and keeping September completely vacant, something they haven't done for 8 straight years. But here we are in the beginning of October, and some people are starting to lose hope or faith that there will be a Switch 2 reveal in this month, and they're now thinking it will be happening in 2025. And the reason this is a big deal, beyond just us wanting to see the information sooner than later, is that if we're not getting a reveal until next year, then that comes with a strong suggestion that the Switch 2 is not coming out until later into next year. Some people have made the argument that they could give us the reveal in January once we're done with the holidays, but I think the same reason why we shouldn't expect a reveal in November or December should also apply to January. Some people are still on the holidays to start January first off, but also January is the return period after Christmas, so it still ties significantly into the holidays. And if you're one of those who thinks that Nintendo would not reveal the Switch 2 right before the holiday due to impacting holiday sales, then I think that logic should also extend towards not thinking they should do things in January. Especially because it would be in poor taste after people have already made significant purchases to then just announce, hey, I know you bought this just 3 weeks ago, but there's this instead in January. I don't agree with the holiday sales argument, but I'm just saying that if we are to buy into it, we're probably not going to see a reveal until February at the earliest. And looking at the turnaround for Switch 1, which was a 4.5 month window of time between reveal and release, that would put the Switch 2 launch smack dab in the middle of the summer, which many people are skeptical would be a great time to release the console. I'm not saying it can't happen, but ultimately what I'm suggesting here is that the implications of a Switch 2 reveal not happening this month, in my opinion, basically suggests we have to wait until like July, August, or September, if not even later. Some people might be thinking the holidays of next year, which by that point, Switch sales will certainly be significantly dry. Every year they've been getting less and less impactful, and by next year, yeah, it's going to be even worse. But where's the optimism? Where's the hope that October is still the time? Well, going to Family Boards, we have some new posts from this journalist known as PH Brazil. And for those that are unaware or don't remember, PH Brazil was the person who reported that Nintendo would be moving up presentations into August, having something to do with Switch 2 plans being moved up. And so we got a Museum Direct in August, we got the Partner Showcase in August, along with the Indie World Showcase. And considering the consistency of directs happening in September to suggest something like this, I think it does speak very well to the reporting and sources of PH Brazil. So they said this yesterday, and this was in response to Space Godzilla. Good morning, Brazil. So do you still think the Switch 2 will be announced this year? Because like half the people on this thread have already given up. Brazil responds, it's the 3rd of October, and y'all are already in need of reassurance? Come on, ha ha ha. Nothing has changed since the last time I spoke about this. A week ago, I still think it's being announced this year. Yes. And the post that Brazil may have been referring to might be this one right here. He was asked, also by Space Godzilla, do you personally think it'll be revealed this year? And he responded then by saying, I'll be flabbergasted if not. I have had reasons to believe the reveal would happen this year since the February story, and nothing has changed on that regard. I get that people got their hopes up for this particular September week for reasons that aren't nonsensical, which is the reason why I made those cautionary posts at the time, but there must be some acknowledgement that neither Nintendo nor any credible source, as far as I know, made such promises. People seem to be getting upset over something that they themselves created. Haha. There's literally a new Zelda game next week. It'll be okay. So that was more like 2 weeks ago, but still. He talked about this then, and interestingly, in terms of credible sources, the only person that seemed to have suggested September that has a history of being credible was Ryan from the Bronx, who we believe was Midori, but I still yet to see 100% concrete evidence that it is the case, even though it does seem likely. And we've already discussed how Ryan from the Bronx has gone on to say that October is a time, and the way they wrote out their post, I kind of felt like they were implying that it would be happening the week before Super Mario Party Jamboree. But also, they initially suggested September, it seemed like, so I'm a little skeptical of what's being said by them currently. And well, in reality, we should be skeptical of everything until it's 100% confirmed, but I'm a little bit extra skeptical on Ryan from the Bronx currently, is what I really mean. But anyways, Brazil still thinks that this is happening. Nothing has actually changed on this front, it just hasn't happened yet. And I would like to point towards a post made by Paul Gale, where he made mention of how he heard that a trailer was being put together, and then there are some other people that seem to support the idea. And this would imply that a Switch 2 reveal would be happening really soon. And Paul Gale suggested a 1 to 6 week window. We are still in that window. No week in that window is necessarily more likely or less likely than any other, at least just from the perspective of the window that Paul Gale offered. We could, of course, look at certain things going on in certain weeks and try to eliminate those weeks, like, say, for example, the week that Echoes of Wisdom came out, or the week that Super Mario Party Jamboree is coming out. We could assume that maybe the Switch 2 reveal wouldn't be happening during those periods of time, but we got a 1 to 6 week window based off what Paul Gale heard, which, by the way, he didn't say he could fully verify. And actually, we got a bit of an update from Paul Gale on this topic. So today, he posted this. When asked about when I think Nintendo Switch 2 will be shown off, I said by October 24th. But that I also did not believe it would be dropped right after Super Mario Party Jamboree, which is on October 17th for those that don't know. For what it's worth, I have narrowed down to an October 10th reveal. The original Nintendo Switch trailer was filmed on Friday, September 16th, 2016, and 34 days later it was shown off, which was Thursday, October 20th. I don't know if this is the case, but if the trailer for Nintendo Switch 2 was filmed on Friday, September 6th, 2024, 34 days later, it would be Thursday, October 10th. Based off the chatter here and there, that's my guess. If the system does not get shown off this month, then I am doubtful that it will be revealed in November or December, and think that February or even March are more likely than January. So essentially what he's saying here lines up with what we're thinking. He's providing a little bit more context for when the reveal trailer was filmed. But the point is, no one seems to know exactly when this is going to happen. And it could be one of those situations where Nintendo might have this trailer ready to go and they could drop it at any point. To put it simply, there's still plenty of October left. There are still several opportunities where Nintendo could, in theory, reveal the Switch 2 this month. And with that in mind, let's look back to 2016. So back in 2016, in the month of October, Nintendo did reveal the Nintendo Switch on October 20th. And since we're talking about certain weeks when Nintendo may or may not decide to reveal the Switch 2 based off games that are coming out during that point, let's look at the games that were coming out in October and how Nintendo decided to handle that Switch reveal. So Paper Mario Color Splash released in North America and Europe on October 7th. Mario Party Star Rush released in Europe on October 7th. This was a Wii U game, this was a 3DS game. And back then they didn't have simultaneous releases, not as consistent. But here it says Star Rush and Color Splash came out in Australia on October 8th. Color Splash in Japan came out the 13th. The Switch was announced or revealed on the 20th. Star Rush in Japan and China was on the 20th as well. And so that's kind of what happened during that month. And what I find interesting about this is that Mario Party Star Rush, released in Japan, a pretty big market for Nintendo, the same day they revealed the Nintendo Switch. Now, Star Rush had already released in other areas earlier in the month, so perhaps the significance of its release on that day wasn't as big of a deal. But they still released the game the same day they revealed the Nintendo Switch. Theoretically, Nintendo could reveal the Switch 2 in the same week as the release for Super Mario Party Jamboree. And you see, when I look at situations like this, it's why I didn't really think Nintendo would care too much about revealing the Switch 2 the week before Echoes of Wisdom. I thought a week gap would have been fine, and it wouldn't really have impacted Echoes of Wisdom in any negative way. But how would Mario Party Jamboree be any different? Well, I suppose you could argue that Jamboree is appealing to a more casual audience, so this kind of audience wouldn't necessarily be as aware of the Switch 2 reveal as, say, the more hardcore audience that'd be investing into Echoes of Wisdom. I think there's some truth in that, but there's also a great deal of overlap. Like, I'm gonna buy Mario Party Jamboree day one, the same way I bought Echoes of Wisdom day one. I play both Zelda and Mario Party. I'm excited for both of them, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I'm also the kind of person that will still be excited for a reveal even when a game is coming out on the same day. Now, regardless of how Nintendo may have handled things back in October of 2016 with the Switch 1 reveal, there are still many out there looking at the Switch 2 reveal and just think, well, there's just too much going on right now. Nintendo is just not going to announce the system during this period of time. We just got Echoes of Wisdom last week. We're going to get Mario Party Jamboree on the 17th, and then on November 7th it's going to be Mario and Luigi Brothership. And so if we assume that Nintendo is not okay with revealing the Switch 2 within 2 weeks of any of their major game releases for this holiday period, then yeah, I would say that we have to start looking at a later reveal for Switch 2. Which kind of brings us into the worst case scenario conversation of this Switch 2 reveal. We know that Nintendo is going to tell us more about this console before the end of the fiscal year, which ends on March 31st, 2025. So technically, a worst case scenario in terms of reveal, I would say, would be sometime in March. And then going back to the situation for Switch 1 and its reveal to release window and how it's just 4.5 months, if we were to look at a worst case scenario that's reasonable, maybe the reveal to release window is a bit longer for Switch 2. Because we have heard that Nintendo wants to do their best to create a large supply so they can combat scalping when the system does come out, so they may want more time to manufacture this console, and so perhaps they're looking at an even larger window. Not to mention that we did hear that initially Nintendo wanted to reveal the Switch 1 in September of 2016, but the state that Mario Odyssey was in at the time wasn't quite there, so they waited a few more weeks. If that's indeed the case, then that suggests that they were actually going to have more like a 5.5 week window from reveal to release. So if we account for these things, then from a worst case scenario perspective, a reveal in March for a release in sometime between September and November is conceivable. Now, I don't think this will be good for Nintendo's sales until that period of time, and I do think they might lose some momentum and the Nintendo brand might feel a little bit of a softening. But of course, they can fix that right up with a really strong launch, the same way they did with Switch 1. And I would assume that Nintendo would continue their cadence of releases with a published title coming out basically every single month. Which brings me to another interesting angle for this conversation. We still don't know about a game for February or March. Typically, by this point in the year, we would have learned about those games because there would have been a September Direct to tell us about those games. Yet here we are in October. So, under this worst case scenario where a Switch 2 reveal isn't happening, there still needs to be some major Nintendo announcements happening really soon. Now, the one time that we didn't know about a March game this late into the year was in 2022. And what they did was announce Bayonetta Origins, a spin-off game from Bayonetta 3 just a few months afterwards, because Bayonetta 3 was a big October release back in 2022. and they didn't announce Bayonetta Origins until the Game Awards in December for that March release. So conceivably, we could wait all the way until December to get a Nintendo published announcement for February or March. But that would just be 1 month, and that was a very rare scenario that likely had something to do with Bayonetta 3 itself coming out in October of 2022. So I would say there still needs to at least be one major game from Nintendo announced, or at least a release date announcement, before that point in time, before December, most likely. And there's a good chance we get 2 before December. And some have been speculating that perhaps there's going to be a late year Pokemon Presents where they give us details on Legend ZA, and it's a February or March game. I do not think this is happening. We've already discussed in the past how PokeBeach made a very interesting observation, how when we take a look at the trading card sets for Pokemon and what they pertain to, it gives us a pretty good understanding of when to expect the release for the next big mainline Pokemon game. And the trading card sets that are coming out in the first half of 2025 don't seem to suggest anything like Legend ZA. So Legend ZA at the earliest seems like a summer release, if not even later. And here's something else interesting. There is no precedent for a second Pokemon Presents of any kind happening this late into the year. Going back to 2013, there was a Pokemon Direct on September 3rd, 2013. But that was September, and there was a mainline Pokemon game coming out for that holiday. There is nothing like that for this year, and we're already in October. Now, the only other time that there was something late like this was back in 2015, where we had a Pokemon Go press conference on September. Again, not even October. So there is no history to suggest that we would have a late year Pokemon presentation giving us news about Legend ZA to come out early next year. And perhaps somewhat interestingly, Brazil seems to agree with me. Melpomina on Famiboard said, "No Pokemon Presents is bad, actually. We want that out of the way going into next week so we don't have to worry about it as a possibility." And here Brazil says, "I dislike commenting on negative space because there's always the possibility that I'll just be blindsided, but I currently don't see any indication that we'll have a Pokemon Presents anytime soon." I'd just like to point out, I like how Brazil goes about responding here because you never know with 100% certainty, right? So he's saying what he thinks while also acknowledging that you never really know, and that is totally true. It is possible that a Pokemon Presents could happen in October, and it could announce Legend ZA, and we might all be blindsided here. But the point is, there isn't really any pattern or evidence that suggests this is what's going down. Now, some might argue that maybe they're going to have a big major showcase for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And if they did that, I'll tell you, I'd be very happy. But also, I've seen the way Nintendo's treating this game. They used it as a closer for the Dune Direct, and a Direct that had Zelda and Mario Party and Mario and Luigi, and that was the closer. This is a game that's been in development for a very long time. It has an expensive budget. They want to have a major marketing campaign for this game, and I do absolutely believe it's tied to Nintendo Switch 2. Of course, that is not confirmed at this point. But what I'm getting at here is that Metroid Prime 4 is unlikely to be a February or March game, because if it was coming out during this period of time, there probably would have been a typical September Direct giving us more details on Metroid Prime 4. Kind of the same way how Nintendo has always handled big games coming out in the early part of next year. Think about it. When Tears of the Kingdom came out in 2023 for May, we got a trailer showcasing the game in September, and that was for May. We're in October. Nothing's been said. I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is coming out in February or March. We might see the game this month, but I think it's because it's going to be in a Switch 2 reveal. Or maybe we see it in December for the Game Awards, even if the Switch 2 is coming out later. I think that's possible. I think we can still see Metroid Prime 4 before the end of the year. I just mentioned 2 good scenarios where it could happen, but I do not think it's coming out this fiscal year. It's also something coming out a little bit later into 2025. So whatever games might be coming out in February or March that wouldn't have anything to do with Switch 2, Nintendo might just shadow drop them on Twitter if they're even happening. But ultimately, what I still believe until October's done is that there's going to be a Switch 2 reveal, and it's going to showcase games coming out early next year, because I think Switch 2 is still coming out early next year. Now, if we get to the end of October, we get to that last full week of October, Halloween comes, and there's no mention of Switch 2 coming out early next year from Nintendo, then at that point, I will move on and accept that it's not happening until maybe at least February in terms of it getting revealed. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.